Part 1. The Institute for Emotional Sciences was the most respected research center in the known galaxy. For over 10,000 years, its scientists had traveled to distant worlds to study one thing: happiness. They wanted to understand what made living beings feel joy. They had visited thousands of planets and studied thousands of species. They had filled massive libraries with their findings. They believed they knew everything there was to know about happiness. They themselves were strange beings by human standards. They stood very tall, often reaching 7 or 8 feet in height. Their bodies were made of a crystal-like material that was mostly clear, like glass. When they felt emotions, colors would move through their bodies like slow-moving clouds. Blue meant calm, green meant curiosity, yellow meant surprise, red meant strong feelings of any kind. Most of the time, adults showed only pale, muted colors. They had learned long ago to control their emotions through logic and reason. Doctor was one of the Institute's best researchers. She had spent 300 years studying happiness across the galaxy. She had seen the peaceful monks of Prime, who spent their lives in meditation and felt a deep, quiet contentment. She had observed the hive minds of, who experienced powerful waves of shared joy during their mating seasons. She had even studied the strange machine intelligences of the Outer Rim, who found satisfaction in solving complex mathematical problems. Thought she had seen every form of happiness the universe could offer. Then the data from Sol 3 arrived, and everything changed. Sol 3 was a small blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star in an unfashionable corner of the galaxy. The dominant species called themselves humans. They were primitive by standards. They had only recently discovered space travel. They still fought wars with each other. They had not yet learned to control their emotions or extend their. By all measures, they should have been unremarkable. But the happiness readings from Sol 3 were unlike anything in the Institute's records. Sat in her research chamber, staring at the data on her display screen. The numbers made no sense. The automated collection drones that the Institute had placed around the planet were detecting happiness signatures that exceeded anything she had ever seen. Not just slightly exceeded. The readings were off the charts. They indicated levels of pure, intense joy that should have been impossible for such a primitive species. Even stranger, the readings were not coming from the places expected. They were not concentrated among the planet's leaders or wealthy individuals. They were not coming from centers of learning or places of worship. The strongest happiness signatures were coming from areas filled with the youngest members of the species, the human children. There must be an error, said assistant. He was younger than her by 200 years and his body showed more color when he spoke. Right now, he was flickering with confused amber light. The drones must be malfunctioning. I will recalibrate them. I already recalibrated them, replied. 3 times. The readings are accurate. Moved closer to study the data himself. But this is impossible. These readings suggest a state of near-transcendent bliss. Our records show that only the most advanced species, after thousands of years of emotional development, can achieve such states, and even then only briefly during special rituals or meditation. These readings suggest that human children experience this level of joy regularly, continuously, while doing nothing of apparent significance. Nodded slowly. She had been thinking the same thing. Look at the comparison data. The adult humans show much lower readings, normal readings for a species at their development level, moderate happiness mixed with anxiety, stress, and dissatisfaction. But the children are different. The younger the human, the stronger the happiness signature. What could explain this? Asked. What do the children have that the adults lack? That was the question that would not leave mind. She had spent the past several days studying everything the Institute knew about humans. They were warm-blooded mammals who walked on 2 legs. They had relatively short, rarely exceeding 100 planetary rotations. They experienced a full range of emotions and formed complex social bonds. Nothing in their biology seemed remarkable enough to explain the data. She had also studied what was known about human children specifically. They were born helpless and remained dependent on adult care for many years. They went through a long period of growth and learning before reaching maturity. During this time, they engaged in an activity called play, which seemed to serve no practical purpose. They attended structured learning centers called schools. They formed friendships with other children their age. None of this explained the readings. Made a decision. She stood up from her chair and her body brightened with the green glow of determination. We need to go there ourselves. The automated drones can only collect so much data. If we want to understand this phenomenon, we need to observe it directly. His body flickered with surprise. A field mission to a primitive world. That would require special authorization from the Institute Council. It could take years to get approval. Then we will get approval. I will present the data to the Council myself. They will understand the importance of this research. Was not so sure. The Institute Council was made up of ancient who had long ago stopped showing any color at all. They were cautious and slow to act, but he could see that had made up her mind, so he simply nodded and began preparing the formal request. To everyone's surprise, the Council approved the mission within one planetary rotation. When presented the data, even the oldest Council members could not hide their reactions. Faint colors moved through their crystalline bodies for the first time in centuries. The data was simply too remarkable to ignore. This could be the most significant discovery in the history of the Institute, declared Elder, the Council's leader. If these readings are accurate, this primitive species may have something to teach us about the nature of joy itself. You have authorization to proceed, Doctor. Take whatever resources you need. Assembled a small research team. In addition to, she selected two other specialists. Doctor was an expert in evolutionary psychology who could help explain why the humans might have developed this way. Doctor was a specialist in communication and cultural analysis who could help interpret human behavior. Together, the four of them prepared for the long journey to Sol 3. The trip took several weeks, even at faster-than-light speeds. During the journey, the team studied everything they could about human civilization. They learned the planet's dominant languages. They analyzed human social structures, customs, and beliefs. They watched recorded visual transmissions that humans broadcast through their primitive communication networks. The more they learned, the more puzzled they became. Human culture was full of suffering. Their historical records were filled with wars, diseases, famines, and injustices. Their current society was plagued by inequality, conflict, and environmental destruction. Their entertainment media often focused on violence, tragedy, and fear. By all logical analysis, humans should have been one of the most miserable species in the galaxy. Yet the children were radiating joy. When the ship finally entered orbit around Sol 3, the team spent several days scanning the planet to select an optimal observation site. They needed a location with a high concentration of human children, where they could establish a concealed research post without being detected. They chose a region in the northern hemisphere of the planet's largest continent. The area had a temperate climate and was home to many human settlements. Most importantly, it contained numerous schools, the learning centers where human children gathered during the daylight hours. The team landed their ship in a forested area and activated its cloaking technology. They established a hidden observation post near one particular school in a small human settlement. The building was unremarkable, a simple structure of brick and glass surrounded by open spaces where children could play. As looked at the ordinary little school through her observation equipment, she felt something she had not felt in many years. She felt genuine excitement. Somewhere in that building were the answers she was looking for. Somewhere among those small, fragile, short-lived creatures was a secret that had eluded the greatest minds in the galaxy. She was determined to find it. Part 2. For 17 days, the research team watched the human children. They observed from their hidden post using advanced scanning equipment that could detect and record the children's emotional states. They watched during the morning hours when the children arrived at the school. They watched during the structured learning periods when the children sat at small desks and listened to adult instructors. They watched during the midday meal times. And most importantly, they watched during the periods the humans called recess, when the children were allowed to go outside and do whatever they wanted. The recess periods were where the team made their most important observations. "I do not understand what they are doing," said on the third day. He was watching a group of children run in circles around the school's outdoor play area. They were chasing each other, shouting and laughing with no apparent goal or purpose. They are expending significant energy, but they are not accomplishing anything. They are not hunting. They are not building shelter. They are not gathering resources. What is the point of this activity? "It is called play," replied. "Human children spend a great deal of their time engaged in it." "But why? What benefit does it provide?" Did not have a good answer. She had read about play in the human research materials, but she still did not fully understand it. They did not have an equivalent behavior. Their children were taught useful skills from an early age. They did not waste time on activities without practical value. Yet as she watched the human children run and chase each other, her scanning equipment registered extraordinary readings. Their happiness levels were incredibly high. They were experiencing pure, intense joy from doing something completely pointless. Dr. the evolutionary psychologist offered a theory. Perhaps play serves a developmental function. Perhaps by engaging in these activities, the children are learning skills that will be useful later in life. The chasing behavior could be practice for hunting. The group dynamics could be preparation for social cooperation. It was a reasonable explanation, but was not convinced. The children were not behaving like they were practicing for anything. They were behaving like the activity itself was the entire point. They were completely absorbed in the present moment, with no thought of past or future. On the fifth day, witnessed something that made her question all her assumptions. A small human female, perhaps 5 or 6 years old by their counting system, was playing alone near the edge of the outdoor area. She had found a small stone on the ground and picked it up. For the next several minutes, she simply looked at the stone. She turned it over in her tiny hands. She held it up to the light. She rubbed its surface with her fingers. Scanned the child's emotional state and was amazed by what she found. The little girl was experiencing a level of happiness that rivaled the most advanced meditation masters of Prime, and she was getting this happiness from a rock. An ordinary, worthless, completely unremarkable rock. "How is this possible?" murmured to herself. She began to form a new hypothesis. Perhaps the source of the children's joy was not what they were doing, but how they were doing it. They seemed to have an ability that adult humans, and indeed most adult beings across the galaxy, had lost. They could be completely, totally present in the current moment. They did not carry the weight of past regrets. They did not worry about future problems. They simply existed, fully and completely, in the now. This hypothesis was supported by further observations over the following days. Watched a group of children drawing pictures with colored waxes. They were not trying to create masterpieces. They were not worried about whether their drawings were good enough. They simply moved the colors across the paper with complete absorption and delight. She watched children building structures out of small blocks, only to knock them down moments later with shouts of glee. The destruction brought them as much joy as the creation. They had no attachment to the outcome, no investment in permanence. They were experiencing the pure pleasure of the activity itself. She watched children telling each other stories that made no logical sense, full of impossible events and absurd characters. They did not care about plot consistency or realistic detail. They were lost in the joy of imagination. On the 8th day, something happened that added a new dimension to understanding. A boy fell down while running and scraped his knee. He began to cry, a loud vocalization of distress that the humans made when experiencing pain or sadness. Before any adult could respond, Another child, a girl who had been playing nearby, ran over to him. She knelt down beside him. She put her arm around his shoulders. She said words that's translator rendered as "It's okay. It's okay. Let me see." The girl looked at the scraped knee. She did not have any medical training. She could not actually do anything to help. But she stayed with the boy, patting his back, speaking soft words of comfort. Within a few minutes, the boy stopped crying. He even smiled. The two children went back to playing together. Had observed countless acts of medical care across many species. She had never seen anything quite like this. The girl had provided no practical help, yet she had somehow made the boy feel better. She had done it through pure compassion, pure presence, pure caring. "They have something we have forgotten," said to her team that evening. "These children, they have not yet learned to separate themselves from their experiences. They have not yet built the mental walls that we consider signs of maturity. They feel everything directly, immediately, completely." Doctor, the cultural specialist, had been studying the human language and social patterns. "I have noticed something else," she said. "The children are remarkably accepting of differences. In this school, there are children from different genetic backgrounds, different family structures, different ability levels. The children do not seem to care about these differences. They play together freely." She displayed a recording from earlier that day. A new child had arrived at the school, a boy who looked different from most of the other children and spoke their language with difficulty. He was clearly nervous and uncertain. Within minutes, a group of children had approached him and invited him to join their game. They did not ask where he came from or why he talked differently. They simply made room for him. "The adults are not like this," Doctor continued. "I have observed the adult humans extensively. They are suspicious of strangers. They form groups based on similarity and exclude those who are different. Somewhere between childhood and adulthood, they lose this natural acceptance." The team discussed these observations late into the night. They were beginning to see a pattern. Human children possessed several qualities that gave them extraordinary capacity for joy. They lived entirely in the present moment. They found wonder in ordinary things. They played without purpose. They accepted others without judgment. They felt their emotions directly, without filtering them through layers of analysis and control. And all of these qualities faded as the children grew up. The adult humans had learned to worry about the future and regret the past. They had learned to judge things as important or unimportant. They had learned to evaluate the worth of activities by their practical outcomes. They had learned to categorize people and treat them differently based on those categories. They had learned to control and suppress their emotions. In other words, they had learned to be unhappy. On the 15th day, made a decision that violated standard research protocols. She decided that the team would make direct contact with the children. She wanted to interact with them, to understand them more deeply than remote observation could allow. "This is highly irregular," warned. "We could contaminate the research subjects. We could affect their development. We could cause psychological harm." Understood the risks, but she felt they were necessary. "We will take every precaution," she said. "We will approach only a small group of children in a private setting for a brief interaction. I need to experience their joy directly, not just measure it from a distance." The team began planning the contact carefully. They chose a location away from adult supervision. They prepared translation devices that would allow real-time communication. They rehearsed what they would say and do. On the 17th day, they put their plan into action. They would approach a group of children who regularly played in a wooded area behind the school during afternoon recess. It was a secluded spot where the children liked to explore and pretend. Felt something she had not felt in many years as she prepared for the encounter. She felt nervous. She felt excited. She felt emotions moving through her crystalline body in colors she barely recognized. She was about to meet the happiest being she had ever studied. She had no idea what would happen next. Part 3. The wooded area behind the school was quiet in the afternoon light. Tall trees cast long shadows across the ground, and birds sang somewhere in the branches above. And her team waited in a small clearing, their cloaking devices still active. Through the trees, they could see a group of 5 human children making their way toward them, laughing and talking as they walked. "Remember," told her team, "let me make the first contact. Move slowly. Do not make sudden gestures. These are primitive beings who have never encountered extraterrestrial life. We do not know how they will react." The children entered the clearing. There were 3 boys and 2 girls, ranging in age from perhaps 5 to 8 years old by human standards. They were looking for something on the ground, probably insects or interesting plants. They had no idea they were about to have the most extraordinary experience of their young lives. Deactivated her cloaking field. The children looked up. They saw a 7-foot-tall being made of crystal standing in the middle of their secret play area. Was already preparing calming words in case they screamed or ran away in terror. Instead, a boy with a gap in his front teeth said, "Whoa, are you a fairy?" Translator device processed the question. A fairy was a magical creature from human mythology, a small being with wings that possessed supernatural powers. It was not an accurate description of a scientist, but she understood what the boy was really asking. "What are you?" "I am a researcher from a distant star system," said. Her translator converted her words into sounds the children could understand. "My name is, I have come to your planet to learn about your species." The boy considered this information for a moment. He did not seem frightened. He did not seem confused. He simply accepted it the way a child accepts that the sky is blue or that ice cream tastes good. "Cool," he said. "Want to see the frog I found?" Before could respond, the boy had taken her crystal in hand and was leading her toward a muddy area at the edge of the clearing. The other children followed, their initial surprise already fatting into curiosity. None of them screamed. None of them ran for the adults. They simply incorporated this impossible encounter into their day as naturally as they would incorporate a new game. The boy showed a small green amphibian sitting in the mud. "I named him Jumpy," he explained, "because he jumps a lot. See?" He poked gently at the creature, and it hopped away into the underbrush. The boy laughed with pure delight as if this was the most wonderful thing that had ever happened. Scanned his emotional state. The readings were remarkable. He was experiencing genuine, powerful joy from this simple moment. And more importantly, he was sharing that joy with her, an alien stranger he had met only moments ago. He had no fear, no suspicion, no hesitation. He had simply decided that she was interesting and worth including in his world. The other children gathered around asking questions. "Why are you see-through? Can you do magic? Do you have a spaceship? Do you eat food? Do you have a mom and dad? Where do you live? Is it far away?" The questions came rapidly, without any self-consciousness or worry about whether they were appropriate. And her team did their best to answer. They explained that they came from a planet very far away, that they could not do magic but had advanced technology, that yes, they had a ship, and yes, they ate food though not the same kind as humans. The children accepted all of this with easy wonder. Then a girl with tightly coiled hair took his hand without asking permission. She examined his crystalline fingers with the same attention the other boy had given to his frog. "You feel like a cold window," she reported. Then she looked up at him and smiled. It was a simple smile, given freely, expecting nothing in return. It was pure human warmth directed at a being from another world. Experienced something he had not felt in his entire adult life. Color moved through his body, a warm rose color that spread from his core to his edges. He was feeling joy. Real, uncontrolled, unexpected joy. The child's simple smile had broken through all his years of emotional discipline in an instant. The children showed the team their secret places in the woods. They had a hideout under a fallen tree where they kept treasures, interesting rocks, colorful feathers, a broken watch that no longer worked but looked important. They showed the aliens how to skip stones across a small stream, laughing when the stones sank instead of bouncing. They explained the rules of their favorite games, which seemed to change depending on who was playing and what they felt like doing. Throughout all of this, observed and recorded and tried to understand. These children had nothing. By galactic standards, they possessed no wealth, no power, no knowledge, no skills. They lived on a primitive planet in fragile bodies that would age and die in the blink of a cosmic eye. They faced a future filled with challenges they could not imagine. And yet they were happy. They were gloriously, radiantly, overwhelmingly happy. Their joy was not based on achievement or acquisition or status. It came from simply being alive, being present, being together. One of the boys had climbed a tree and was calling for the others to watch him. He was not climbing toward anything or away from anything. He was climbing for the pure pleasure of climbing. When he reached a high branch, he shouted down, "Look how high I am." His friends cheered for him. He beamed with pride and happiness. Realized something important. The children did not experience joy as a reward for accomplishing something. They experienced joy as the natural state of being alive. Happiness was not something they had to earn or achieve. It was something they had to unlearn and lose. The afternoon passed too quickly. Eventually, a distant bell rang, signaling that recess was over and the children had to return to their structured learning. The children said goodbye to the aliens with the same easy warmth they had shown throughout the encounter. "Will you come back tomorrow?" the gap-toothed boy asked. "I do not know," said honestly, "but I will remember you always." The boy nodded as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Then he ran off to join his friends, already talking and laughing about something else. The encounter with beings from another star system had already become just another part of his wonderful, ordinary day. The team returned to their hidden ship in silence. They sat together in the main cabin, not speaking, processing what they had experienced. Colors moved through their crystalline bodies in patterns none of them could control. Finally, Doctor spoke. "I have spent 200 years studying the evolution of happiness in sentient species. I thought I understood the biological and psychological mechanisms involved. I was wrong. I understood nothing." Doctor nodded. "I have analyzed the communication patterns and cultural values of 4,000 species. I thought happiness was a product of social organization and shared beliefs. Those children showed me something different. Their happiness came from within. It was part of them." Looked down at his crystalline hand, the one the little girl had held. He could still feel where her small, warm fingers had touched him. That child smiled at me for no reason. She wanted nothing from me. She simply shared her joy because it was her nature to share it. I have never experienced anything like that. Was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "We have spent 10,000 years measuring happiness, categorizing it, trying to optimize it. We have built entire philosophies around the pursuit of joy. And all that time, the answer was right in front of us. The answer is what we lose when we grow up." She thought about the journey every human child would take. They would go to schools where they would learn to sit still and follow rules. They would learn that some activities were productive and worthy, while others were pointless and wasteful. They would learn to worry about what others thought of them. They would learn to plan for the future and analyze the past. They would learn to control their emotions and hide their true feelings. All of these lessons were considered necessary for functioning in adult society, and all of them, piece by piece, would steal away the natural joy that every child was born with. The humans called it growing up. In a way, it was a kind of death. The death of something precious and irreplaceable. "What do we do now?" asked. "What do we tell the Institute?" Considered the question. She would have to write a formal report, of course. She would have to present her findings to the council. She would have to explain what she had learned in terms that the ancient could understand. But she knew that no report could truly capture what she had experienced today. No data could convey the feeling of a child's hand in hers, leading her to see a frog named Jumpy. No analysis could explain the power of a simple smile given freely to a stranger. "We tell them the truth," said finally. "We tell them that we found what we were looking for. The secret of happiness is not something to be achieved. It is something to be remembered. Every being in the universe is born knowing how to be happy. We spend our lives forgetting." The ship lifted off from Sol 3 as the sun set over the small human school. Below them, children were going home with their parents, chattering about their days, already looking forward to tomorrow's adventures. They had no idea that they had just changed the course of galactic philosophy. They had no idea that their simple joy had touched beings from the stars. They did not need to know. They were too busy being happy. And somewhere in the vast reaches of space, heading home with colors moving through their crystalline bodies, 4 ancient beings were trying to remember how to be children again.